Welcome back, guys, to an all-new video game discussion. Today, I wanted to focus on an upcoming game from the creators of Dead Space, and that is the Callisto Protocol, a title that'll be coming to next-gen platforms and PC in 2022. Here with me is my good buddy Alex Mason, UnrealEntGaming, founder of the Unreal Network. Alex, thank you for joining with me yet again on a really exciting topic such as this.
This is gonna be good, only because I just can't wait to see what this game is gonna, I think, have in store for us going into 2022. So thank you so much for having me, bro.
Yeah, dude. So first, let me just say, I was really excited when we were doing some horror discussions and stuff on your channel, and I shared this with you, and you were so surprised that this had gone under your radar, and you flipped the same way I did. So your excitement mirrors my excitement for so many reasons. So we'll talk about a little bit about what we expect the story is going to be like, which is obviously just our opinions based on what the trailer has shown, what we want to see in this game, and also some really crazy connections this game has to not only PUBG, as it is in the same narrative universe as that game, but also Dead Space as well. So first, let's talk about the trailer. So we know that this takes place in a prison. We know it's on Jupiter's moon, Callisto. But tell me more about your thoughts. What sort of things did you notice that's got you really hyped about this?
I don't know. I would say like the atmosphere. The atmosphere really, I think, grasped my attention because I love games that are set in a very dark kind of ambient style kind of setting. I think that based on what the trailer has shown us, this game is going to offer a lot of depth for us to explore certain areas where it's going to be really dark. It's going to be very devoid of life, and I can't wait to see what's going to be lurking in the shadows, just because in that trailer we saw what was lurking behind the shadows, and I don't even know what to call it, but whatever it was that emerged, it looked like John Carpenter's The Thing, and it looked
Yeah.
great because as soon as it consumed this individual and it just devoured him, that person morphed into a hideous creature, and I loved it. So what I really love so far is just the ambiance, the dark tone. I hope they keep it that way. That's what made Dead Space 1 and 2 really great for me.
Mhm.
Outside of Dead Space 3, Dead Space 1 and 2 really captured the element of darkness and the element of ambiance, and that's something that I really, really want to see executed more so, because it's kind of like telling the story of exploring the dark with something having to linger inside.
Yeah, just real quick, I had recently just finished the Dead Space trilogy on my YouTube channel, so I know what you're talking about. Dead Space 1 and 2 are masterpieces. Dead Space 3, as a game, not so much. The story, though, tripped me out like crazy, and I had heard that Schofield, or Glenn Schofield in particular, one of the co-creators of Dead Space, is the one who's overseeing the Callisto Protocol, and there are rumors floating around that a lot of what we're going to see in this game takes sort of some I guess script notes and planned plot details of the canceled Dead Space 4 and brought into Callisto Protocol. So there's a lot, and we'll talk about this in a minute, a lot of connections between that. But I got to agree, the monsters in this, or at least the one that we had seen in the trailer, which if you've seen the Red Band trailer, oh my God, it's so much more intense than the actual standard trailer. But this necromorph thing hybrid, just completely covered in mucus and blood. It's very clear that this is an infected cellmate that has just turned into this nasty creature. And the Red Band trailer really got me hyped because this thing, no pun intended, jumps on the other cellmate, the main one that's talking and that we see kind of doing stuff in the trailer, and jumps through his eye sockets and his mouth and his nose, all of his orifices, to likely infect him with whatever this alien creature is. And oh man, that got me super duper hyped. And I was just reading a little bit about this game, and there's not much that we know about it. So let's talk about some of the things that we do know and some things from that point, where we think it's going to go. So Callisto Protocol is set in the same narrative universe as PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is wild to me. So I want to talk about that first. Apparently, this game takes place in the year 2320 in the same universe as the Battle Royale game PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. As to why, I don't actually know necessarily why they're connecting it, but apparently PUBG, the company that makes the game, wants to have an expanded universe of games that continue on with the narration. So tell me your thoughts on that. That's a little bit crazy, don't you think?
I don't really like the idea of, Players Unknown Battlegrounds. That's so stupid to me. It's why? Maybe it's a tease, maybe it's a troll. I don't know. I think that's just really dumb. If you want to set the tone in inciting the idea, saying like, okay, well, this takes place after Dead Space. Just say it. The events of the story takes place after the events of Isaac and Dead Space. That would make a lot more sense, and I think it would capture a lot more people than just say, oh, well, this takes place during the events of Players Unknown. But that's horribly dumb. I don't like that. I think that turns a lot of people off, because I've seen people talk about, oh, well, this and this and this, and oh crap, this might happen. Oh, wait, what? Players Unknown Battlegrounds. Like, it's just so weird and random and so stupid. So I think that's the only thing that I dislike about this, only because there's just no placement in any of this, to be honest.
Yeah, contextually, it's very confusing. And like, I've played PUBG, and it's just like any other battle royale game. I mean, it's got obviously a lot of the things that you'd expect in that, but for the most part, I'm not aware of any narrative that's in that. I didn't think there was any lore in PUBG. I thought it was just, here's a bunch of people jumping in, and they're going to be just fighting for their lives to survive, and then you win, and there you go, and it just continues. But maybe there is a little more to it. It really caught me off guard when I read for the first time that this game is supposed to take place in the distant future, but in the same like universe as this, as humanity is starting to colonize, which means there's a bigger purpose for what's going on in PUBG. So part of me was thinking, like, how could that be, and why would you want that to be? So I think, like, my mind started to jump into sort of imaginary situations where they explain why that is, and I just got a thought that maybe the PUBG experience, or the Battle Royale experience, is, all right, here's sort of like a, what am I thinking of? Hunger Games type of situation. 100 people jump in, one guy comes out, or two or three or four, depending on the team set. But that's basically it, is that you survive, and then you go on and you continue on in your maybe you just become famous or something like that. Maybe they're studying humanity. Maybe the gas or something that spreads across humanity. Maybe they've colonized on Callisto because it's theoretically covered in ocean water, which means that, you know, there's a possibility of life there. And maybe the gas or something in PUBG, like, cause people to mutate and freak out, and all of a sudden the planet is overrun with like these mutated human beings. I don't know. They haven't given us that, but it is definitely odd for them to do that. Now, the game itself, the trailer clearly shows a couple of people, but one of them is a cellmate who has the only speaking lines, really, and he like dies. So he's not going to be the one, I don't think, that we would play as, right? Like, this guy looks like just some random fodder for the teaser trailer to set up sort of what sort of enemy that we're going to be dealing with, right?
Well, I mean, even then, I don't want to say that the enemy that we see is going to be like the be all end all. Could it be? Absolutely. In terms of like presentation, so we don't know what kind of enemies they're going to be. I hope that it's not the same ones as the one we saw in the trailer, meaning it's just a bunch of those. I want to see something very different, and it kind of insinuates that there will be, because what he turns that dude into is something completely different than what the original monster was that we saw in the trailer. So
right.
The only thing I'm really skeptical on is the narrative, because we know that it's a warden behind all of this, or at least it's implied that he's going to be behind the massacre. Which, again, you know, I believe they're on, what is it, Black Iron on Jupiter's moon.
Yeah,
so
a prison called
you know,
Black
being
Iron.
that we're going to be all the way out there, I just love the level of just desperation, because imagine being on one of Jupiter's moons and knowing that once you go there, there's that possible chance that you may not come back.
Right.
That to me is like really awesome. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so I was thinking about that too, because I obviously in the trailer at the end, they sort of pan out and they show a camera screen that's been monitoring the cell that this guy is in when it looks like his cellmate transforms into this necromorph thing creature, and it attacks him and likely kills him and infects him as well. So it stands to reason that the warden who is overseeing all these panels, and we know it's the warden, like, it's not just context from the trailer, like, it's been confirmed that is the warden who is engineered this whole thing. And as to what reason, that's obviously unclear, and that'll probably be one of the mysteries that we unfold. But I imagine that it's probably to do with money, power, or some sort of weapon, maybe a rare resource on the planet, or some sort of test. Because if it's possible that PlayerUnknown's Battleground, from a video game standpoint, from a player perspective, is just us, you know, trying to win, like, but there might be a bigger picture than that. What would that be? It's monitoring humanity, understanding humanity, testing the effects of this gas. Like, other than that, there's not really a lot that I can think of what they could do with the story narratively. Of course, there are going to be people, like I've said in the past, smarter than me that will have better ideas, but that's just one thing that I can think of off the top of my head. So if it's possible that those events of PUBG happen to have a lingering effect on humanity, which, I mean, it sounds like there's some wild stuff going on in in PUBG, then we can only imagine what's going on with Callisto Protocol. Some guy is the architect behind some major catastrophic event on this moon. And who knows, like, could you imagine, first of all, like being a warden or a guard or someone on that moon dealing with people that have done so wrong that they're isolated on this like very far off distant moon of Jupiter to carry out their sentence, which I have to imagine is probably not for like substance abuse or carrying paraphernalia. Like, you're probably sent here for doing really, really bad things. So if the warden is doing something to the cellmates, it's probably because they likely have a death sentence. So who cares? Like, this is going to be a testing on humanity. That's
right,
my thought.
but at the end of the day, they're still people too. So that's what makes it even more like kind of maniacal. And again, the game is a ways away, and who's to really say it won't get delayed again? You know, like because that tends to happen. If they're hyping this up for 2022, then I mean, for all we know, we could get to that point, and then they're gonna be like, well, we need another year, 2023, and so on and so forth. So to close this off, I would say like that game so far looks promising, but I don't know, brother. There's always that chance that people can just take a great idea, great trailer, great concept, and just mess it up. And that really all depends on like what is going to happen going into next year. So I can only hope that they're going to give us something fresh, clean, and for the love of God, just come out and just flat out say, yeah, the PUBG stuff, you know, the PlayerUnknown Battleground stuff was just like a little rib, nothing serious to take there. You know, the events that are going to take place of the story happen to take place after Dead Space, and that would, I think, make for something a lot better than, you know, PUBG, you know.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing is, like, I know right now, like, you touched on 2 points that I think are very important to acknowledge. Is one, we're in an era where people of publishing companies hype up video games and then they fail to deliver, like, big time. Like, Cyberpunk 2077 is one that pops up in recent memory. We've talked about Destiny in the past and Anthem and like so many other games in that way that just don't live up to the hype. Now, this is a very different type of game. From what we can tell, though, it's not going to be like a games as a service or a live game or anything like that, so that helps. Granted, 2077 was not either, so who knows. But one thing that did stand out to me about this is that Glenn Schofield, who again, co-creator of Dead Space, mentioned that not only of the like 150 some odd employees that he has in his company, being striking distance, a new company. This is like their first big project of 150 some odd employees there. He said about 25 to 30 former coworkers from Visceral Games and Sledgehammer are the ones that are going to be helping make this game. So if you didn't know, Visceral Games was the one who was behind the Dead Space franchise, and Sledgehammer is behind a lot of the Call of Duty platforms. So you can expect some major action here. But he also said that everybody is working hard to make this the scariest game on next-gen platforms, which means, just to be clear, this game will not be coming out, as far as we know, for current PS4 and Xbox platforms. It's going to be PS5 and Xbox Series X and PC only. And Xbox Series X and Series S, I should emphasize as well. But you're right. I don't want to get overhyped by my own curiosity and intrigue on this, because it could fall flat. But I'm very, very excited to see like what sort of tie-ins we have to Dead Space, because the first 2 games, as you mentioned, are just perfect in my opinion. Absolutely love those games.
Well, I think by the end of it, to make everything relatable, and I think to have the consumer invest in your product, you have to detail that little kind of like small portion to say like this takes place after Dead Space. And I know we're gonna segue into another video talking about this, but I don't think there's ever gonna be a Dead Space 4. This is the closest thing you can get, and this would be a perfect kind of idea to spin off into something else, to suggest, oh well, you know, X amount of time later, was it like 300 years later? You can say like, okay, well, after all of this time, let's take a look to see what had changed following Isaac's events. And then they can dive into this, and they can actually dive into an idea to where they can do the Callisto Protocol 2, 3, and still expand on that. And I think it's a good idea, but the only thing that I don't like is just the whole PUBG stuff. Like, that's just ridiculous. But until then, we can only feed off of what we know. And I could also hope to see the enemies in the game evolve just like that creature did, because as the prisoner was talking, that creature was getting bigger and bigger behind him. Like he was rising up, and you could see his bones breaking just to reassemble himself. And then finally, when he got in his face, he was huge. and it was
Yeah.
like, whoa, dude. So I hope that we get to have like enemies like that, to where they constantly evolve. Again, very similar concepts to that of the thing, which I'm looking forward to.
Definitely. And I mean, I have some suspicions that a lot of the teasers and connections between this game and Dead Space might go far beyond Easter eggs. Because if you watch the trailer closely, there's a handful of Easter eggs related to Dead Space. And I think it's weird, like you said, to connect it to PUBG. And I think that was just probably something that they said, hey, we want you guys to make a really scary game that continues on the narrative of PUBG. And Schofield was like, okay, fine. I'm just going to use a lot of my Dead Space material, and that's what we're going to do. But I think it would be truly breathtaking if this game turned out to be a spin-off or somehow tied into Dead Space and connect all three. So Callisto Protocol, Dead Space, and PUBG all connected somewhere. Now, like I said, I don't care about the PUBG thing. That's just something that they're doing from a business point of view, that they're just doing it because that was maybe one of the conditions to make this game. But let's break this down for a minute. So first and foremost, you'll notice on the walls of the cell that we're focusing on, scribbled on the wall there, it says, IC was here, which is a very clear reference to Isaac Clarke. And if that's not enough, JC was here too, which is John Carver, who was the other guy that we saw in Dead Space 3. So Isaac Clarke, obviously the main character of the first three games, and then John Carver was the main or a side main character or a playable co-op character in Dead Space 3 as well. So the other thing is, and I want your input on this, is so the prisoner is reading a book on engineering, which, okay, like, yeah, Isaac was an engineer. That's not exactly like something pointing directly at Isaac, but the book itself was written by author E. Langford, which is a clear reference to Isaac's love interest in Dead Space 2 and 3, Ellie Langford. So it's like, okay, now you're really diving in there. So before we go on to some of the other Easter eggs, tell me, what do you think the probability is, or any potential chance that this game could truly be a not just a successor to Dead Space, but actually in the same universe as Dead Space?
Oh, very high. I mean, I think they're gonna save that until the game is nearing its release, to kind of
Mhm.
tell people like, hey, guess what, and then boom. Um, Again, I marketing wise, remove PUBG, but I think as we near, so let's just say the end of 2021, I think by then we're gonna get more info, and I think by then we are going to get more content to suggest, okay, well, where does this take place? What universe? What reality? And then they're probably going to come out if they're smart to say like, okay, this takes place in the same universe, and as a matter of fact, it takes place 300 years after, which I think is the best choice of action to go with.
Sure. No, I agree. And I'm hoping that we do find out as like some sort of surprise or a teaser that it is tied into the Dead Space franchise. Because I mean, it's not unreasonable to say that, okay, maybe there's some sort of like IP release or something. Because like I don't think EA, after the acquisition of Visceral and then dismantling it, I don't think they ever, at least I don't recall them ever saying that they had plans for Dead Space moving forward. And we'll talk about that later. But Dead Space 4 was something that they wanted to do, but then it got canceled, and then we never really heard from it ever again. So who knows if that's the case. But I do find that all the connections in this trailer, and I mean, that's a lot to jam pack. Like, why would you do that if it's not connected at large to Dead Space? Like, are you just trying to lay it on thick that, hey, like, this is coming from all the best people that made Dead Space what it was, 1 and 2, and just so you know, like, that's what we're going to try and do here to replace your desire for Dead Space in the future? Because even the prisoner's jumpsuit, it has like a number on it. That's Isaac Clarke's birthday. So, I mean, you have not only the engineering reference, the book written by Ellie Langford, presumably, you've got Isaac Clarke's birthday in there. IC was here. JC was here too. I mean, come on. Like, it's one thing to have a single Easter egg in there as a nod to be like, hey, like, remember Dead Space, the game that you really wished got a fourth game in it and it didn't happen? Well, this is going to replace that. It's starting to feel more like, hey, like, there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye, because jamming so many Easter eggs into like a less than 3-minute trailer is pretty intense, I think. What do you think?
No, I mean, like I said, it just makes sense for that to be the case. But I think once again, as we near the release, that's when they're going to reveal what's good. Because fans aren't stupid. I'm pretty sure they've picked that up.
Yeah,
So as they picked it up, I think, because it's deliberate. I think that the studios and the people behind this put that out for people to see. So it's obviously like right in front of your face. You're not going to sit there and be like, "Oh, it can't be Dead Space." Well, all the signs are there for for it to be the case. So I think the only way to know, like I said before, is just as we near closer to its quote 2022 release. And then from there, we're going to get a lot more information to kind of back up the idea of where this takes place and what happens going forward.
Yeah, I agree, because even some, there were still more Easter eggs in that trailer too. If you really pay close enough attention, I mean, there's references to "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," which was a
Yes,
song
yes.
that was featured in the other Dead Space games at some point as well. I mean, you look at the glowing bar on the back of the prisoner's neck. It's very obvious that that too was also probably a health meter or something like that, which was very similar to the one that goes down the spines of Isaac Clarke and some of the other characters that you see in the Dead Space franchise, respectively. So there's a lot going on with this. Even more so, I would say there's a hell of a lot more going on between this being connected to Dead Space than PUBG. So again, it feels like the PUBG reference is just a business decision, and the connections to Dead Space are like massive. So there's just a lot more going on with that. So that's why I think that there's a high probability that this could in fact be more of a Dead Space thing and not just a successor, but like literally in the same universe, than possibly, something else going on with that. So I don't know. I'm really looking forward to it. There's a lot more that we have to discuss in the future. We're going to be touching base on this topic again because obviously right now we don't know a lot. And all I'm saying is I hope that we get the scares, chills, thrills, and the excitement that we had previously seen before in the Dead Space franchise in this game. I just, like I said, I don't care too much about the PUBG connection, but neither here nor there, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I think by the end of it, like I said, we're not going to be bound to get another Dead Space game. So this is
Yeah.
the closest thing to it. It's just a matter of how do you correct and fix the mistakes of Dead Space 3 and do everything right that you have with the first two games and give us everything in a much more well-rounded kind of polished product that's brand new and that takes place after. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
See, you know what? Before we go, I do want to add one thing to that, because I feel like we've talked about this before, but still, there's the only things that really bothered me so much about Dead Space 3 was that it was heavily microtransactioned, and it didn't have the same passion, I think, invested in like the same first two games. And I really think all you got to do, you know what? If it's not broke, like, don't fix it. I think you could very much support the fact that if you just follow the formula of Dead Space 1 and 2, then you've got a hit on your hands. I mean, obviously enhance it for next generation consoles and for PC at that point, but you don't have to like completely reinvent the wheel. Everything about Dead Space 1 and 2 was amazing. Dead Space 3 fell short just simply because it had EA's stink all over it, and they wanted to capitalize on that rather than allowing the game to just flourish and be a natural flowing entity on its own, which ultimately killed the franchise. EA literally came in, bought Visceral, and killed the franchise with the way that Dead Space 3 panned out. Like, that was really unfortunate, but neither here nor there. Do you have any additional thoughts real quick before we wrap things up?
Just for this, I would say like I think we touched basis on everything that there is so far for this. I hope that and I wish that they come out with more for us to talk about, things more and just to kind of have something to theorize and talk about. But until then, I doubt we're gonna get anything anytime soon. The closest thing we'll probably get to this will be like E3 or whatever happens during that time. Or if not during the summer, late summer, I think we're gonna get something like some screenshots or whatever the hell. But until then, I'm excited. I just hope that they don't ruin it. That's basically it for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. So there's a lot, like I said, that we've got to talk about in the future of the Callisto Protocol, a game that doesn't have an official release date, but is targeted for 2022. But don't hold your breath. With everything still COVID-related going on in the world, that could possibly be pushed back. But that doesn't change the fact that we are hyped for this game. But we also got to keep that in check as well, because we don't want to get super excited only to be let down. But fingers crossed, this is the exception, and things do go super duper well. As I said, we'll talk about this more in the future when there's more information to cover, more trailers and other tidbits. Big events for gaming will be happening in 2021, so we'll hopefully be able to revisit this again once we have some more details. But either way, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate that. Before you go, don't forget to like the video if you found this interesting, or if you're as excited about the Callisto Protocol as we are. Subscribe to my channel as well as Alex's channel. The links down in the description box contain all of his social media, so support him there if you will. Alex, thanks again for spending some time with us and talking about this super awesome horror survival game.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, and I can't wait to discuss more once we find out and kind of have a little bit like more of an idea as to what this is going to be about.
Absolutely. Thanks again for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves, be well, and I'll see you next time when we've got more video game discussions for you. All right, later, everybody.